In Valheim, when you build a line of traps and then arm all of them, triggering one will cause a domino effect that sets off all of the others. I've done this a couple of times before, the first time blowing up my bed, and then after that, my entire house. But I felt like these didn't go far enough, so this time I've set up over 25,000 traps all throughout this little town. Today, we'll look at how I built all of this, how I managed to record it without my PC catching on fire, and, of course, what happened when all the traps were set off. I really hope you enjoy. This all started by taking a backup version of the actual world I play on with my friends, but this time I decided to really try and push Valheim to the limit and build as many traps as possible. To do this, I needed more space, so I replaced our home with all of this. Now, building this town followed by setting up all of the traps took me a lot of time and effort, especially since, believe it or not, I managed to make all of this legitimately without using any cheats or dev commands. Nah, just joking. So after all of that, it turned out I'd set up a little over 26,800 traps. I didn't have a goal for the total number of traps I wanted to build, but by the time I was getting this buttery smooth 10 FPS, I was getting more worried about whether I'd even be able to set them all off without crashing the game. Not only that, but I'd noticed some strange things that were starting to happen more often. Sometimes the game would stop calculating the stability of structures, so I could make floating platforms that would stay there for days at a time when they would normally break straight away. It turned out there were a couple of traps that were doing this as well, meaning that instead of breaking right after being built, they broke after all the other traps had been armed, triggering the others around it and crashing the game. I also found this weird quirk where placing grass on the ground could cause traps at the top of the tower to break, with the same result. I ended up having to revert to an older save, removing some of the traps I thought might be causing these issues, and not arming any of them until everything else was built. And when it finally came time to arm the traps, I discovered a new set of issues. Firstly, I had wild creatures randomly walking into traps and setting them all off. I didn't capture footage when this happened, so instead, I'll recreate it for you now. Anyway, to deal with this, I first tried flinging the creatures away.
And liftoff of the Delta II with Grail.
But new ones would appear in their place, so I started building workbenches everywhere to try and suppress the spawns. Eventually, I did find a better solution by using set key commands, giving all creatures 0 speed and size. This made creatures that had already spawned in unable to move, which finally let me get revenge on those annoying deer who had run away from me far too many times. For new spawns, they were so small that they could only be seen when they died, as this made their bodies return to normal size. Can you see the extremely small grey dwarf that is on screen right now? I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, it was here. Did you get it right? Let me know in the engagement section below. Also, if you want to learn more about set key commands and some of the other crazy things they let you do, I'll leave a link to a video in the description, along with all the commands I used in the making of this video. Now, I haven't mentioned the greatest threat to this whole project. Me. While I took great care to leave spaces in the buildings so I could get in and out when arming all of the traps, there were of course a few times that I accidentally hit one of them and set everything off. Not only that, but I also triggered the traps by doing things like opening a door that I'd accidentally closed, or by picking up something from the ground that was barely visible. Most times something like this happened, it would crash the game and set me back to the last time I'd saved. In the end, I made around 150 local saves for this entire process. But eventually, after all these setbacks, Everything was ready. You might be wondering how I was actually able to blow this all up without crashing the game, since it crashed many times when just some of the traps were set off. And, well, it did crash. Many times. But I'll explain that afterwards. I first want to show you over 25,000 traps destroying this small town. Enjoy. In case you're feeling sorry for the victim of the video, keep in mind that he'd been caught numerous times by his friends not removing the stump after cutting down trees. The way I recorded this was by running the game extremely slowly using the timescale command. Not only did this help stop the game from crashing, but it also let me get smooth looking footage once I sped up the video in editing. For the most part, I ran the game at 0.5% speed, and it worked okay. Well, except for this part here with the towers. Even at that speed, the game would still crash. I ended up going slower and slower until I was leaving the game running overnight, each time waking up in the morning to see whether or not it had crashed again. But eventually, after over a week of trying, I managed to get this single 8-second shot, which took me over 18 hours to record. So excuse me if I leave it playing on repeat so I could make it feel like it was worth it. It wasn't worth it. Even before speeding up the footage, the actual audio in these recordings was unusable, so I had to make my own. I went into my sound recording studio and then took the sounds of the structures being destroyed and traps being set off. Then I copy-pasted them a billion times while editing. If you want to hear an example of what the audio sounded like before the video was sped up, I've got one here. So, to spare your ears, that's all for today. I would like to thank my patrons Ahmed, Colesnail and Wayne, along with everyone else who has donated. You're all the best. Also, quick shout out to the poor souls that gave their lives for this video. You will not be missed. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Okay, now that I've played it a couple more times, nah, still wasn't worth it.